Coming up on a newscast, the South Korean won has hit its lowest point against the Greenback in 13 years. It surpassed the 1,320 mark for the first time since 2009. A new police bureau under the Ministry of the Interior and Safety will be launched in August. The move comes as bills have been passed for the police to gain more investigative power from the prosecution. South Korea's foreign minister will visit Tokyo next week. The three-day trip involves discussions with its Japanese counterpart on bilateral ties and various related issues.
Hello, hope you're wrapping up the week well. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with our top story. The Korean won dipped to a concerning low against the U.S. dollar, levels not seen since April 2009. The benchmark stock index closed higher, though, as foreign investors returned to buying. Choi Min-jung starts us off.
The South Korean won has hit its lowest point against the U.S. dollar in 13 years and 2 months. The exchange rate for the won passed the 1,320 mark just minutes after the market opened on Friday and closed at 1,326.1. From the previous session, it was an increase of 14 won. The last time the won reached 1,320 against the dollar was in April 2009. The won has been depreciating on concerns about a global recession and as the U.S. Federal Reserve raises interest rates, which makes the dollar more attractive to investors. Experts forecast the won to weaken further in the second half of the year as the dollar will likely remain strong for the time being. Despite the weakening won, however, the country's benchmark stock index, the Kospi, recovered from an early decline to end with a gain. The Kospi closed at just under 2,331 for a gain of 0.37%. Foreign investors increased their net buying of semiconductor shares. Samsung Electronics jumped nearly 4.4%, recovering to above 60,000 won for the first time in around a month. SK Hynix also gained 5%. But with the combination of a weaker won, high inflation, and high interest rates, the uncertainty is expected to continue for a while. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
In H1, the nation received less FDI than last year, due mainly to growing uncertainty in the global economy. The figures were down in the service sector, and there was a decline in investment from the EU. Shin Ha-young helps us look beyond the digits.
Foreign investors poured less money into the South Korean market in the first 6 months of this year compared to a year before. According to the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy on Friday, FDI decreased by more than 15% on year to about 11 billion US dollars. Despite the fall, the amount is greater than that of 2019 before the pandemic outbreak and is the third largest for the first half of any year. One expert says the fall was expected due to uncertainties linked to global key rate hikes.
The global interest rates has been rising very rapidly in the United States, in Europe, and also in Korea. So, investment is negatively related to interest rate. And as interest rate goes up globally, it is not strange that international investment has to fall down.
In the meantime, the ministry spoke positively about certain types of investment.
Services investment and investment from the EU, which takes up the largest proportion of the investment, decreased on year. However, the increase in the amount of investment cases, along with the jump in manufacturing and greenfield investment, is a positive sign.
The service sector, which accounted for almost 80% of the total investments, dropped by 26% on year. On the other hand, investments in manufacturing, which take up about 15% of the total, have jumped by 53% from the year before. Investments from EU, China, Hong Kong, and Singapore shrunk, while the U.S. expanded investment by 40%. Meanwhile, the Trade Ministry says it will announce plans next week regarding strengthening the incentives for key items in the supply chain and improving regulations to expand foreign direct investment. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen denounced Russia's war in Ukraine as brutal and unjust and said the country's finance officials share responsibility for its consequences. Speaking at the opening session of the meeting of G20 finance officials in Indonesia, Yellen blamed the negative spillover of the war solely on Russia, particularly higher commodity prices, and urged G20 members to step up financial assistance to Ukraine. She also called for immediate action against a short-term food insecurity crisis and to avoid distorting the market with export restrictions and stockpiling. Yellen emphasized countries should target fiscal measures to help those most in need rather than adopting blanket subsidies. Indonesia's finance chief called for a forum involving G20 finance and agriculture ministries aimed at tackling growing food insecurity and a looming fertilizer supply crisis. President Yoon Suk-yeol met with cabinet members in charge of science, ICT, and labor. The South Korean leader ordered the government to invest more in source technology. Yoon Jung-min brings the highlights from that session.
South Korea's science roadmap under President Yoon Suk-yeol will focus on developing super gap competencies in the global realm driven by the private sector. That's according to the Science Ministry on Friday during its first policy briefing to the president.
We will newly establish state innovation based on cooperation with the private sector and ensure prosperity of the nation and society through spreading pioneering technological innovation and digital innovation.
The first step to be taken is to better manage research and development project funds so that more budgets can be directed toward the development of strategic technology. Unnecessary regulations will be removed. For instance, preliminary assessments will be exempt for R&D projects worth less than around $76 million from the current $38 million, and assessment period will be cut down for relatively smaller scale projects.
President Yoon ordered the ministry to make R&D investments into future strategic technology and source technologies with greater ripple effect.
To bolster new technologies like quantum, bio, or 6G, the government will work together with private companies and use more funds to secure source technology or patents over the next few years. More money will be spent in developing technologies and chips and artificial intelligence. Yoon also urged his science and ICT minister to create a special program for fostering top-class talent and come up with an action plan for opening its space economy. This is also in line with the Labor Ministry's policy plan unveiled on the same day, designed to nurture some 180,000 people by 2024 to secure enough workforce in sectors like AI and big data. The Yoon administration has laid out a roadmap that places much emphasis on creating a positive synergy between the private and public sectors and boosting the nation's competitive edge as a global race for technological advancement heats up. The key now is how well what's on the paper is implemented and executed in real life. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Korean-made eco-friendly cars are garnering greater popularity. In H1, they accounted for more than a quarter of domestic auto sales, and exports rose to a record high. Overall vehicle exports were up as well. Here's Kim Hyun-sung with a breakdown of the figures.
Gas guzzlers are waning in popularity, while demand for eco-friendly green cars is accelerating. 1 in 4 cars sold in South Korea in the first half of this year were eco-friendly. Kia's Sportage HEV and EV6 and Hyundai's Ioniq 5 were some of the most popular models. Both domestic demand and exports have climbed more than 30% on year, while exports topped $7 billion for the first time. High overseas demand for these sustainable cars has pushed South Korea's motor companies, Hyundai and Kia, up into the top 5 of the global EV market. Exports were strong not only for green cars, but also for South Korean cars in general. More than 1 million cars were sold overseas in the first half of the year, up 1.5% from the year before. In total, more than $24 billion of cars were sold, marking a 3% on-year rise. The robust exports seem all the more impressive, considering that the automobile industry is still wrestling with overseas supply chain problems. Semiconductor supply is still on shaky ground, with China still locking down major cities to contain COVID-19. Also, because South Korea recorded the 3rd highest car sales last year, this year's domestic sales seemed weak in comparison. Both these factors brought down domestic production and demand. Production fell 2% on year, while demand tumbled more than 11%.
But with South Korean motor labels constantly innovating to create cutting-edge new models, like the soon-to-be-released Ioniq 6 and the 2023 version of the Ioniq 5, the domestic car industry is heading for a bright future. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
A new bureau that directly oversees the National Police Agency will be launched, the first such move in over 3 decades as part of reforms to the police and the prosecution. Kim Bo-kyung outlines the changes to come.
A new police bureau under the Ministry of the Interior and Safety is to be launched in early August. It will be the first time in more than 30 years that the ministry has exercised direct control over the police. The National Police Agency having been separated from the Ministry of Home Affairs, the precursor of the Interior Ministry, in 1991.
In order for the Interior Minister to properly carry out the roles and responsibilities granted by the Constitution and the law, a new police bureau will be established within the ministry led by a senior superintendent general.
The launch of the new bureau comes as the police are due to be given more investigative powers that had belonged to the prosecution. Under new laws passed recently, the investigative powers of the prosecution are to be reduced and ultimately removed starting early September. The bureau will be established through a revising enforcement ordinances rather than laws. Under new branch, 3 departments will be installed with a total of 16 staff, 12 from the police. Departments will be submitting key policy and law proposals regarding police to the cabinet for approval, recommend candidates for top police positions, and support autonomous local police. Meanwhile, the minister also announced to come up with a set of regulations regarding the head of 2 agencies, National Police Agency and National Fire Agency. It would give the Interior Minister the right to get advance reports and approve key policy decisions. Adding on that, as part of the plan, not only the police wage would be increased, but also the police workforce in order to better deal with increasing economic and cyberspace crimes. A new 13-member committee will also be launched under the Prime Minister's office to properly implement the measures. And the bureau will be set up on August 2nd after going through the necessary process, such as a cabinet meeting. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Park Jin is scheduled to visit Japan for the first time as the nation's foreign minister next week. The 3-day trip starts on Monday. Discussions with his Japanese counterpart are planned on bilateral ties, issues related to the peninsula, as well as other mutual topics of interest. The top diplomat will express condolences for the recent death of former PM Shinzo Abe. Seoul is also negotiating when Park will visit China to meet his counterpart there. Nothing concrete decided yet, but there's a chance the trip will take place next month in commemoration of the 30th anniversary of establishing diplomatic relations, perhaps on August 24th. The nation's daily COVID-19 tally hovered close to 40,000 again. Authorities attributed the rise to the highly contagious Omicron subvariant BA.5. The government will strengthen quarantine inspections at major airports ahead of the peak summer vacation season. The KDC announced 140 more quarantine workers will be assigned to Incheon International Airport and 7 other regional airports starting next month. Major tourist sites across the country will get around 2,500 staff assigned for tasks like disinfecting and ventilating various venues. Staying with how South Korea is facing another wave of COVID-19, the government decided to make a second booster shot available to more people. For details, let's turn to our Min Suk-hyun.
Starting next week, more people will be eligible to receive a 4th COVID-19 vaccine dose, that's a second booster. Currently, second booster shots are only given to people aged 60 or older and to those with weakened immune systems. But from Monday, eligibility for those shots will be expanded to people in their 50s, as well as to all adults 18 and older who have pre-existing health conditions. It will also include people living in facilities for the disabled and the homeless. So when can people get their second booster? Well, health officials are recommending they get it at least 4 months or 120 days after the last dose. But it can be administered just 3 months later in some exceptional cases, like for people in the hospital. Some might wonder if it's really necessary to get a 4th shot when they've already had their 3rd dose or have already been infected with COVID-19. The answer is yes. Health officials say it's unclear how long immunity lasts from a coronavirus vaccine or infection, but they estimate that it's about 3 months. This is why they highly recommend another booster, especially for the elderly and those with underlying medical conditions. Starting Monday, the leftover vaccine feature on the messenger service KakaoTalk and the portal site Naver will show on a map which hospitals and clinics have them available. Reservations can also be made on the KDCA website and call center. For those who reserve a vaccine dose, it'll be available from August 1st. Min Suk-hyun, Arirang News.
Over in Ukraine, Moscow's latest missile attack struck a city far from the eastern border, killing at least 23 people. The death toll is likely to rise as many others are missing or injured. President Zelenskyy demands Russia be declared a state sponsor of terrorism. Han Sung-woo has the latest.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has once again called on the world to officially recognize Russia as a terrorist state. In his nightly video address on Thursday local time, the leader also demanded that Russian forces be held accountable through international legal instruments.
The status of a terrorist state for Russia, a special tribunal on Russian aggression, a special compensation mechanism that will direct the funds of the terrorist state to those it wanted to destroy, and of course new sanctions for terror. New sanctions are also needed as soon as possible.
His words came after Russia's brutal assault on Ukrainian civilians in the west-central city of Vinnytsia, where as of Thursday night, at least 23 have died as the result of a cruise missile strike, with several more missing or injured. Among the fatalities were reportedly 3 children under the age of 10. In an apparent response, the United States Embassy in Kyiv issued a security alert urging all Americans in Ukraine to evacuate immediately, cautioning that large gatherings and organized events may be targeted by the Russian military. Russia's attack came just before an international conference on alleged Russian war crimes in Ukraine. More than 40 countries convened in The Hague and agreed to collaborate on investigations into the suspected war crimes. Also discussed was Zelensky's request for a special tribunal.
It will probably not be easy. There is merit in doing that with as many friends as possible from the international community, but we will seek to support Ukraine where we can.
In a statement released afterwards, the European Union called the assault an atrocity and condemned Russia's, quote, fundamental disregard of international humanitarian law. The Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, meanwhile, said in a new report released Thursday that it had found credible evidence suggesting Russian forces had indeed committed war crimes, including the killing, rape, abduction, and mass deportation of civilians. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
Shifting our focus to a different story now, South Korea is moving forward with plans to spend $3 billion to buy 20 more F-35A stealth fighters. The defense minister led a meeting of a committee on defense procurement and improved plans to purchase more of the jets up until the year 2028. The country already has around 40 of them. Through this project, Seoul plans to enhance key defense capabilities to deter threats from North Korea. During Friday's meeting, the committee also approved plans to replace its aging military choppers at a cost of just over $1 billion. Drones flying around Seoul could be a common sight in just a few years. With the goal of successfully commercializing urban air mobility in the capital by the year 2025, an event showcasing the latest in related tech is held. Ji-young takes us there.
This is a non-detectable reconnaissance drone that can inspect up to about 500 kilometers around it. These kinds of drones are to be key strategic assets for the Republic of Korea Army.
To Republic of Korea Army, drones can be a game changer on the battlefield. The Army has been mainly fighting on land, but with drones, it can expand into the air.
Futuristic drones are front and center at the 2022 Korea Drone and Urban Air Mobility Fair. The Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport began hosting the 2-day event this Wednesday, offering a glimpse of how the future might look.
The sports of the future are also being played on the sidelines of the event, combining the virtual world with physical reality. Racers from all over the globe are flying their cutting-edge drones around obstacle courses in the 2022 Korea Drone Race World Cup.
The world's #1 player in the women's category says she's very happy to come to Korea as she can improve her drone racing skills.
There may be another race in Korea in October, and I might come to participate again. I will keep improving myself to maintain my rank.
Also, more than 1,000 athletes from home and abroad are competing in the Drone Soccer Championship, all showing off their drone dribbling skills. But drone sports weren't the only thing that was in the spotlight. The South Korean government has ambitious plans to commercialize urban air mobility in Seoul by 2025 and make it a means of everyday transportation by 2030. But the Minister of Land, Infrastructure and Transport says safety is key.
For UAM to be positioned as a form of mobility for the public, it should be safe, convenient, and affordable. In particular, we cannot make even 1% of a step forward unless 100% safety is guaranteed.
In order to reach the required standard, he added that the ministry plans to submit a bill regarding UAM to the National Assembly in August. It'll push for drastic reform of the regulations to create a healthful environment for firms in the industry. Also, with the private sector, it'll undergo test flight projects to verify safety. The ministry will also come up with various measures to meet public demand and minimize risks in the early stages of commercialization. Also, UAM Team Korea, made up of local institutions and experts, will be in the center of private-led commercialization. 엄지영, Arirang News.
Poryang Mud Festival is back after a 3-year hiatus due to the pandemic. As if to make up for lost time, the event, which has various concerts, mud-related activities, and rides, runs for 31 days instead of the usual 10. So those who miss out this weekend will have plenty of time to enjoy this unique South Korean festival. It began in 1998 and takes place on the Daecheon Beach in the city of Poryang, Chungcheongnam-do Province. In the past, the beach was seen as muddy and tourists tended to avoid it. That's why the festival was created as a way to help boost the local economy. Tickets go for 9,000 won or just under $7. Booking info can be found on mudfestival.or.kr. This year's Seoul Festa will be bigger than ever with lots of discounts in shopping, lodging, and much more. The Seoul Metropolitan Government unveiled the schedule. The K-pop group NCT Dream will be headlining a concert at Jamsil Stadium. The world's biggest electric car race will be zooming through the city's streets. Big discounts of up to 50% at some 3,000 participating department stores, online malls, and hotels. Along the Han River, there will be a variety of activities like swimming, aquatic sports, and movies. These events will run from August 10th to the 14th.
This weekend is forecast to be sweltering again with a combination of on and off showers and strong heat. Maximum temperatures across South Korea will hover near 30 degrees Celsius or more. For southern regions, including Gyeongsang-do provinces and Jeollado provinces, temperatures will be relatively higher. With the humid air from the constant showers, conditions may feel stuffy and muggy. Showers will be widespread tomorrow. As for the amount of rain, northern central regions will see up to 60 millimeters. The rest of inland regions, including the Seoul metropolitan area, will see about 5 to 40. For Jeju Island, heavy downpours are expected at times, and thunder and lightning will also accompany, so please be extra careful. The capital region and Chuncheon will see rain for the morning hours. Lows in Seoul will be starting off at 23 degrees. Daily highs in Seoul and Busan will reach 30, Gwangju 31, Daegu will be hot at 33 degrees. Next week, southern regions, including Jeju Island, will see long spells of monsoon rain. It's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that's all from us. As always, thank you for watching.